All right, the orcs are closing in. Alan, it's your turn. What do you do?
I pull out my axe and I take a swing and... Shit. Welcome to Mugs and Magic, a tabletop gaming podcast from board games to role-playing games and everything in between. My name is Alan, and I buy new dice for every RPG character I make.
That's expensive. How do you afford that?
I'm broke.
I'm Erica, and you can count on me to tank during any and every roleplay game.
That just means you go down in the first round.
No, that means I'm the one rushing in, dealing all that damage. I'm a dwarf.
We'll see. So before we get into the topic of our episode, Erica, what are you drinking? What's in your mug?
Well, I need to tell you something. I don't have a mug tonight, and I kicked off the podcast.
Well, as long as you pour it in a mug, you'll be fine.
Okay, I got a hard seltzer. Let me go grab a mug. I'll be right back. We got this.
All right. While we're waiting for Erica to go grab her mug, let me tell you about Geek Grind Coffee. We just ordered their sampler box, which has 7 different coffees in there, from Dragon Roast to Dwarven Dawn. Really excited to get this box in, and we'll give you a full review of this coffee once we get it in.
We got to try 7 different coffees? Hell yeah.
Gonna be up all night.
So in this episode, stealing your line, we're talking about board games that are also role-playing games. These are board games that are spin-offs from pen and paper RPGs, or they have elements of an RPG, like a character sheet, levels and hit points, attack modifiers, and a campaign progression.
And this is not our top 5 RPG games of all time. These are just the top 5 games that we're currently playing right now.
If we wanted to talk about all the RPG board games you've played, we'd be here for a long time.
I do have some honorable mentions about those old school RPG games that were back in when I was growing up as a kid, but you can't get them now, so we're not going to dwell. We're not going to dwell too much on them. But I do want to shout them out because they were a lot of fun, and I think these games kind of take the place of those now.
Yeah. So why play a board game when we could just sit down with our character sheets and some dice and play a good old-fashioned RPG?
Well, I think that these games are, they're a great gateway to get board gamers into role-playing or role-players into more board gaming, as they're just kind of a good crossover.
Yeah, that's a great point. I also like that they are ready to play, and everyone can play with little to no setup. There's no pre-planning, there's no prep. These board games have everything you need to just pick up and play a game. And we've all had those weeks, running our separate campaigns where we just don't have it in us, right? Like maybe it's been a long week at work and you're just, I don't want to run a campaign.
Absolutely. And most of these games is like everyone at the table can be a player. You don't need a DM because the rules or an app will take the place of a GM, and everybody gets to play and have a good time.
How come you have never been in one of my RPG campaigns? Wow.
Well,
I've been in yours.
Where's my invite?
Okay, roll up a character right now. Who are you going to be?
I'm going to be a gnome illusionist named Xander Glitterstone.
Wow, you had this ready.
I did. I actually keep it in my back pocket. Let me just unfold this paper for you.
I wish I had paper to ruffle.
Yeah, there you go. Here, let me just send you the link to my D&D Beyond character.
Okay. All right, we'll make that happen. Another thing we like about these games is that they're really helpful for people who are visual people. Like you don't have to imagine the map. It's already on the map. You're putting out your hexes, or it has a board. You can already see the monsters. Either there's minis or standees. You don't have to imagine what a kobold looks like. Like you just see it. Some people like that.
Absolutely, yeah. All the maps, minis, and the adventures are already written out and planned. So there's, a lot of RPGers don't necessarily like railroading, but sometimes if you just want to kick down the door, beat up some monsters, take their loot, and this is a good point for that.
I don't want to say it's mindless, but it is just kind of you're all going with the flow around the table, having a chiller night.
Right. These games generally, like the missions that you play, they give you a goal, which is going to be like kill all the monsters or search and find this or save this NPC. So everyone's on the same page as what needs to happen in order to complete the mission, and everybody works together to do that. And because these are RPG games, you can still have fun role-playing these characters
building your character, making choices for your character.
Absolutely. So there are a lot of elements from the pen and paper that are in these that you don't have to ignore just because it is a board game.
Yeah, and when you get to sit down and name your character, you name it Alan, and you move on.
It said name on the sheet. I didn't know. I was trying to name it a character name.
Well, let's get into these games. I want to talk about one that I know we love. We have many hours logged into this game, and that's Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. This is by Fantasy Flight. There's 1 to 5 players. We play with 3. There's no GM needed because there is an app that runs the whole thing for you, and it is great. I'll let you start talking about it because I know you love this game.
That is my number 1 pro about this game is the app. The Journeys to Middle-earth game, it's a free app, so that's another bonus, is that you don't have to buy this app. You can go and download it on your phone or your tablet, whatever it is, and you set it up and it runs pretty much everything for you. It'll tell you how to set up the map, it'll tell you what monsters get spawned, it does the attacks, you plug in your attacks whenever you hit the monsters, and it just walks you through basically every single round. The core set comes with, you basically, when you get the app, you just tell the app what game you have. So you tell it, I have the core set, I have this expansion, I have this expansion, and the app already calculates all that stuff so that when you're building your maps and or it tells you to pull out this many, it already knows what game pieces you have. So it's not telling you to grab stuff that you don't.
Gotcha. And if you click on there that you are playing with an expansion, it knows that you could start using those components as well.
Absolutely. And of course, when you're setting up your game, you're going to tell it which characters, like how many players, which characters. It'll tell you those characters have these set items and so forth. It keeps track of all of your items and
your experience, so
and
you
those
can
kinds
buy new items.
So in between your adventures, you go into the app and then it'll tell you like you can upgrade this, or I bought this skill upgrade and that. So
we love doing that.
It's a really great app.
Anytime an item gets upgraded, we're like, oh yeah, can't wait.
So Fantasy Flight, you get an A+ because your app
is great.
It is awesome.
It
really makes fun. This game. I wouldn't say it makes or break this game, but for other RPG games out there, the app really is a bonus for this game.
I also really like that this one gives you choices in your adventure. Well, actually, I'll say another thing. If you fail a mission in this game, it does not halt the storyline progression. There are some of these games, and we've even talked about them in our Unbeatable Games episode, where you just get stuck on a level or a mission or whatever, and you're just stuck there trying and trying and trying to beat it. This is not like that. If you fail, you might have some sort of negative thing going forward, or you might miss out on some lore or some experience, but you still keep going with the storyline. And sometimes you even get a choose your own adventure choice of which mission you want to go on. Do you want to go left or do you want to go right? Your group needs to decide right now. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's definitely the RPG element of this. Outside of course, you're picking the characters, and your core set is, if you're familiar with Lord of the Rings, you're going to get a lot of the main characters right off the bat. You're gonna get Aragorn. You're gonna get Legolas. You're gonna get Gimli.
Them guess who I am.
Gimli, the tank. Bilbo's in there, and they have those characters
unique abilities.
Right. Those characters have their kind of set cards. They're like Legolas has Legolas cards. And then, of course, on top of that, then you get to choose. It's not called a class in the game. It's a path, I believe. But then you choose, like, Legolas is going to be a hunter, or he's a pathfinder, or something like that. And that gives you extra abilities that you can change out in between missions, which actually comes really in handy as we were playing in there. We
did learn that, like, 26 plays in.
Yes, that you can change out paths and stuff.
Alan likes to try out. We've tried and started and stopped a few different times just to flesh out and figure out really where we wanted to be as far as who we wanted in our group and who we wanted to play. And Alan is good about trying lots of different characters, whereas I know what I like. I want to rush in. I'm a dwarf, and I want to melee some... I'm not going to say the word I want to say. But you've tried a lot of different characters. Who's your favorite so far? Could you pick one? Who have you liked playing the best?
I think it really depends on our party makeup, because you're playing Gimli and you're going the Guardian, which is the tanking path, and
protecting.
And then Yellow Meeple is
Yellow Meeple, that's her name,
is playing Legolas and Hunter, so she's all of our range damage. So we have the person who's up close in melee, and we have the person who's ranged. So I like playing the utilitarian, which is either going to be Aragorn, who most likely you're going to take the captain, which does a lot of boosting, or I'm playing Elena, who I switch back and forth.
Ass around that board.
Who I choose, depending on what scenario, like if we're doing a journey, so the journey phase is where you're going across a large map, like a big swath of land. And I'll usually take the Pathfinder because then I can traverse long parts of the land in a couple of moves versus spinning, like you guys only get a limited amount of move.
Yeah.
Or if we're in close confines when we have our battle maps, then I'm choosing the Burglar because I'm doing a lot more hide actions, which gives me bonuses to my attacks since my attacks are generally really low.
Last thing I want to say about this game before, because we have already talked 10 minutes about it because we love it, is, or less than that, I guess, is they just announced brand new expansion, Spreading Lore. We are going to get our hands on that. Absolutely cannot wait. Have new characters, new scenarios, new minis, new really badass looking minis. So can't wait for that.
Absolutely. And there is another expansion. There already is an expansion out, as well as with the app, there are DLCs, downloadable content, adventures outside of that. So even if you just have the core set, they have some adventures. I think they're like $5 or $6. So there are plenty of adventures you can play just with the core set. So moving on to our next game. This is a game we just started playing. We actually just completed Scenario 2 or Mission 2 this week. Is Gloomhaven, Jaws of the Lion, which is by Cellofair Games. Its players are 1 through 4. No GM is needed. That's all handled by the rule book. And my favorite pro about this game is that it actually is at a lower price point than Gloomhaven, the core set.
You're not going to call it Big Boy Gloomhaven? That's what... Big Daddy Gloomhaven.
Big Daddy Gloomhaven. Yeah, so Big Daddy Gloomhaven, the core set, it's well worth it.
Oh yeah.
But it is like $150 or $200 box set. It is heavy. There's a
95 scenarios.
Yeah.
Whereas this one I think has 24.
And I want to say there's like 12 or more class characters in here. So there's a lot to unpack in the Gloomhaven core set. But what's great about Jaws of the Lion is, one, it's a standalone or an expansion to that. But if you're just wanting to like, what's Gloomhaven?
Test it out.
Right. If you're just like, what's Gloomhaven like? Am I going to like this? You can get in at a lower price point than going in at a full $200 game.
It's a perfect introduction. And they even say that in the rule book. They're like, if you're enjoying this, you need to go shift over to Big Daddy and to check out all these 95 other scenarios. It has a little bit different rules in the core set. But it's really nice, and again, we are newbies to this. We've just played our first 2 scenarios, but it's really good at slowly introducing us to how to play, adding on new mechanics every scenario instead of just slapping you in the face with all of them at the beginning. So we're really enjoying that. Already, I think we're invested in our characters just 2 sessions in, already wanting to upgrade items and see their new abilities. So I can definitely understand, just with our limited gameplay, I understand the hype behind Gloomhaven.
I'm certainly enjoying it. One of the things I like about this is the scenario book where the map is in the book.
Yeah.
So it's just like you just flip. Okay, we're going to scenario 2. You flip it, and
instead of struggling with laying down map tiles.
Yeah, it's like the map is already in this little flip book. All the instructions about your goal, the flavor text, about like what your mission is, all that stuff is already in there outside of the adventure book, which is what you're reading, or the rule book, I should say, which you're reading like how the monsters and movement stuff works. The other great thing I like is just in the first 2 scenarios that we've played, it's introduced us to the mechanics of the game. So it's like, here's your character. You start off with these ability cards. This is how initiative works. This is how your ability works. These are how monsters move. Yeah. So it's not like, it just doesn't dump you into the first thing. Like, you don't have to read all these rules and then start playing.
That's what just happened to us with Kids on Bikes.
Right. So this introduction, or these first couple of scenarios, are introducing new mechanics slowly. Like, here's your base mechanics. Now we just add 1 or 2 new mechanics to the scenarios.
Yeah, I'm liking it. I can't wait. I cannot wait to play Scenario 3. Our next group of board games, this is all on Alan because he owns, I think, every single one of them, and we have never played them. These are the or at least with me. These are the D&D Adventure System board games, Castle Ravenloft. What do you have?
So there are quite a bit of them. I think there's like 6 or 7 of them now. But these are the D&D Adventure System board games, and there's when they first came out, it was like Wrath of Ashardalon, then Castle Ravenloft, Legend of Dritz, And now they that was like right at the tail end or mid height of D&D 4th edition, and now D&D is in its Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
For those not familiar, I don't know how you would not be familiar with D&D, but for those not familiar, Dungeons and Dragons. But now they're kind of coinciding with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, and a lot of them coincide with whatever new adventure path they're putting out now. So back when they launched, they had like Against the Giants and Elemental Evil, and so the board games were coinciding with that, right? So like all of their product was, hey, this is Against the Giants. That's like our theme for the next 3-6 months, and so like all the product was centered around that. But what's great about these games is that if you're familiar with D&D, you pretty much have this down. You're going to pick a character. You know, you have an attack bonus. You can move. You're going to roll a d20.
Do you have a board? I'm trying to visualize it. I have no idea. Talk to me like I'm dumb.
So it is map tiles. So the way that the game works is that you'll have a starting tile and all your heroes start there. You have an adventure book which will lay out what your mission and goal is. And then on the map tiles are different arrows, black arrows and white arrows, and then that basically just kind of
start building out your area.
Yeah, so you're like
kind of
okay,
betrayal.
I'm going to move. So you move to the edge of that tile, and then when you get to that edge of that tile, you pull a map tile and you click it in, which could have a different corridor. It could close off corridors, right? So the map will never be the same. You can play through and it'll be different every time. And then depending on what map tile you draw, the icons on that particular tile will tell you to draw a monster card, and then when you draw that monster, and then it'll tell you what monster. So that's the other thing is like the monster deck is going to be different. So you don't know what monster you're going to draw.
And there's no GM needed.
No GM needed. Everything is handled through the adventure book or the rules as far as how to govern the monsters and those kinds of things. And it's really fast play in the sense that your character only has 2 levels. So on your hero board, you only have level 1, which every mission scenario, you're going to start off at level 1. When you gain enough experience during your scenario, you'll flip it over to level 2. Generally, you just kind of get a little bit more hit points. Your attack bonus is a little higher. And then, for the most part, these monsters, like, you're going to roll a d20, and basically it's just, if you roll over a 10, most of the time you hit, and then you just do like 1, maybe 2 damage. And a lot of these monsters don't have more than 1 or 2 damage. I think the bigger monsters have like maybe 4 hits or 5 hits. And then of course there's generally somewhere in there you're going to have your big bad evil guy, which is your biggest mini, which will go down on the map, and then you go from there.
Yeah. So would you suggest if someone wanted to jump into the adventure system, they just picked one that of a campaign or of a genre they really like?
Absolutely. So all of these are standalone. You don't need to go in sequential order of when they were released. And the other great thing about them is that you can mix and match them. So if you have all of them, or you just have 1 or 2 of them, you can crisscross the minis. You can all of that stuff. So you can pull the heroes from one box to another one, and monsters too. You can mix and match the monster decks and those kinds of things. So that's really great.
Yeah, that's a good pro.
The rules are pretty much the same. It's just introducing some new mechanics based on, right? So like Castle Ravenloft is going to have particular mechanics to Castle Ravenloft, whereas Dritz is going to have mechanics to the Underdark kind of stuff. But outside of that,
gotcha. Well, I want to move on to our next game, which is still a D&D game, D&D board game, and that's The Adventure Begins by Hasbro. This is like your introduction to RPGs or RPG board games. It's for 2 to 4 players, and it's ages 10 and up. Like, it is definitely targeted at the younger audience. That's why it's called Your Adventure Begins. And it is a very light version of everything Alan just described about the bigger adventure system board games, but like I said, on a lighter, more kid-friendly or family-friendly, let's say, level. It's really cute in that it prompts you to have role-playing opportunities. It will say, tell the group how you are going to use this weapon, or if it's your turn to be the GM, that is something that's different. The Dungeon Master passes from player to player every round, so everyone gets an opportunity to tell the story, but it will prompt you and say, just real light things, describe how you will do this. And I think that's a really great skill to start bringing in, especially if you're playing with your family or trying to get your young adventurer interested in RPGs or even in board games. So I had a lot of fun playing it. We played it together. I would say a con, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, if you are a seasoned adventurer, you might not find much here. Again, it's cute. I recommend it, but don't you think you probably want to be bringing in your younger crowd when
It's
you
definitely
play?
yeah, it's definitely geared towards a younger audience, which I liked because we played with my 8-year-old daughter. She really had a great time playing
She
it.
loved picking which attack she was going to use which turn. There's only like 2 options, so
Right.
they have a limited number
Right,
of
and
things
the
to choose
character
from.
sheet is boiled down to just a little hero card. You have a couple of ability cards. The maps are pretty short. I think it's like 4 or 5 rooms,
Yeah, you're going
and
through
then
Neverwinter.
and each room has like one
One
monster.
monster. Yeah.
So everyone's focused on just kind of beating one monster, collecting treasure. So it's very
Light.
boiled down.
Yeah.
But it's great if you have young ones that you kind of want to introduce into role playing, and maybe like you were talking about before, like the whole
Just start
theater of
getting
mind,
comfortable.
the theater of the mind aspect of D&D might be a little out there, and this kind of helps with more visual aid.
Yeah.
And everything comes in the box, so it's not like you have to go out and buy a battle map and a bunch of minis and those kinds of things.
Agreed.
So our last game that we're going to talk about in detail is going to be Role Player by Thunderworks Games. This is 1 to 4 players, no GM needed. And what I like about this is it's not like all the other games that we talked about that are very much like you pick a character, you're going through a dungeon or exploring a map and you're fighting monsters. This is none of that.
Nope.
But what's great
what's
great about Role Player is that it's a game about one of the greatest aspects about an RPG game, which is creating your character.
So fun.
So with this game is that every player is going to choose a
class.
Is it no? It's a
choose a race
board,
and a class.
right? Yeah. So it's like okay, you got basically if you're familiar with almost any fantasy RPG, you've got humans, elves, dwarves, dragonkin,
yep.
Orcs, those kinds of things. And
Elves.
so you pick what race you're going to be, and then from there you're going to pick your it's drawn at random, isn't it?
Yeah, you draw a dice color and
you
that's
draw
your
a
class,
dice color,
but it's double-sided so you can pick
yeah. So
but it does start you off with some randomness. You get a random alignment, you get a random backstory, and what you are in charge of is building up your character's traits, their items, their weapons, their armor, their abilities through cards and rolling dice. And if you are into RPGs and you're listening to this because you're interested in RPGs, you like dice, which means you're gonna like Role Player. I love rolling dice, picking them, putting them on your board.
It is a great game. It is a game that has a gambling aspect on there because at the beginning of every round you got to bet on who is going to basically take what
the initiative order,
right? And then from there you're rolling dice, and so each one of those colored die is going to roll a 1 through 6, and then you're trying to build your stats. And you're trying to figure in a certain way.
Very puzzly, so, which I like.
Depending on what your race and your class is, right? So if you get a gnome, a bard, your charisma, it was going to tell you, it's going to say you need a 16 in order to get most of the points out of this character. So you're going to be trying to put like your 6s that you get into there, as well as use some of the item cards and alignment cards and skill cards to help fluctuate that. So it's great because the other thing is like you're not really going against each other, but you're definitely trying to
get the dice you need.
You need. So you're definitely trying to influence those dice as best you can.
I had a good idea, or maybe it's a good idea. I had no idea, and that was what if we ran a one-shot campaign, use any RPG system you'd like, but you have to use the end result of your character from a role player game as your character in that, one shot or mini series or something. Wouldn't that be fun?
It definitely could be very fun.
It'd be random.
Yeah, because
I don't want to be chaotic, neutral or whatever, but that's the random alignment I got, so I'm rolling with it.
Well, you better use those alignment cards to shift it to wherever you want it to be. And Role Player has a couple of expansions to it as well. That you can outside of the core set, and it also has at least one spin-off, which is Cartographer.
Yeah.
Which is a nice roll and write.
I really like that
which
game.
Has role-playing
building your map.
Yeah, it has role-playing elements on there as well.
So those are all of our big detailed games. We do have some honorable mentions, or I'm calling this the new hotness section because maybe we haven't played it a whole lot to talk about in detail. All 3 of these, if we're going to talk about all 3 of them, require someone to take on the role of a GM. So that is different from all the others. Someone needs to take on that role, and the rest of the players will be the players.
We're going to be talking about the Goonies, which this just came out. So it's based off of the Goonies movie.
Never seen it.
Wow, who are you?
I know.
And so it's a great movie. Go watch it.
Okay.
But so it is based on a movie, and there is one player, so it's 1 to 5 players, but that's 5 players that you can have as players or heroes.
Oh, plus the GM.
And then you have one who is the GM, who actually get a GM screen, and you're going to be controlling all of the monsters and setting up the scenarios and those kinds of things, while the rest of the characters are trying to complete missions. So we just got this game. We haven't played it yet. We kind of just like looked at the rules, looked at all the pieces and that kind of stuff. But we're really looking forward to playing more.
Do I need to watch the movie first?
Yes.
Okay. The next one we want to shout out is the brand new, again, new hotness, Kids on Bikes, Snallygaster Situation board game. We have just played this as well. Again, same similar thing as the Goonies. You do need someone to go behind that player or that GM screen and be the lost kid, and you are trying to get the rest of the kids to find your location because you were kidnapped. Then you're all trying to together defeat a bad guy, and that changes between games. Once you find the lost kid, I did like this mechanic. You're now jumping in as a normal kid, so you can start to help us explore the map and defeat the monster. Super cute.
If you're not familiar with Kids on Bikes, you may be familiar with the show Stranger Things. It's very similar to that. There is no correlation as far as Kids on Bikes.
It's the same vibe.
It's not based on Stranger Things and vice versa. It's just Kids on Bikes has those same tropes about kids on bicycles
exploring their
small town, yep. And there's some sort of monster. What's great is you do get
there's a kid with powers,
right, which is the lost kid. So you do get 4 monsters, each with this different difficulty. So you can basically choose the lowest difficulty when you're playing the first time through, and then as you get more familiar with the game, choose the hardest one. The GM, who is the lost kid, spends time giving clues as to where to find them because they've been abducted by the monster. And then once they are found, they do become part of the party and they do get an action. And then the lost kid usually is at random has some sort of power like telekinesis or pyrokinesis or something to that effect.
Very similar to the actual roleplay game, Kids on Bikes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Last one is Descent, Journeys in the Dark, 2nd edition. I don't know anything about this. I don't know why I started talking about it. But I do know I have seen, is the 2nd edition the one you have, or that's the one coming out?
2nd edition, the one I currently have. It is a very popular role-playing game that's been out for quite a while. Certainly has been out a lot longer than some of these other games that we've talked about. But there is a new edition. Descent is by Fantasy Flight Games. They have a 3rd edition or later. I don't even necessarily know they're calling it 3rd edition, but there is a new edition that's coming out later this year in the fall. Looks really great.
The minis are awesome.
And 2nd edition doesn't use an app. It is map tiles that you grow out.
Is there a GM?
There is a GM. There is a game master who has the campaign book, controls all the monsters, sets up the scenarios, that kind of stuff. What I do like about what's coming up with the new edition is, and you can see this because I'm guessing what they've learned from games like Mansions of Madness, and Lord of the Rings: Journeys in Middle Earth, is that app is so great, and I think they're using that same sort of technology so that I don't necessarily know if there will be another GM. I guess that's something
the app would probably, I would assume, run it.
Yeah. So definitely we're going to be checking out the new version of Descent, which with that coming out, I don't think 2nd edition. You could probably still find it now, but I don't think any new product is going to be coming out. So if you can find it, great. Or if you find it at a reseller, even better. It's definitely a game to check out. But if you're just going to get into it, you might want to wait for the new edition to come out later this fall.
Awesome. Well, that's the games that we're currently enjoying. We could talk on and on about games we still want to play or recommend. Let's just rapid fire it. What's a game on your wish list that you want to play? I'll go first. Big Daddy Gloomhaven.
For sure, I want to play Big Daddy Gloomhaven. I definitely want to play Mice and Mystics.
It's cute. I've played it one time. It's really cute. Really cute. I want to play Too Many Bones. I like dice. I've already said that, and it looks really cool.
I definitely want to play Shadows over Brimstone. I'm a Deadlands fan, which is a Weird West fantasy role playing game, and this has that all over it. It's definitely Wild West theme. It has Cthulhu elements, so it's right up my alley. And they have tons of expansions for it. I think they just recently came out with a revised edition, so
It looks cool.
I definitely want to get into Shadows over Brimstone.
I do want to shout out one of the tweets that we got from. We asked, what RPG games do you like? And at Double Crit Fail says War of the Ring is pretty great. We haven't played that, but it is Lord of the Rings, and we like Lord of the Rings. So I don't know if that's also still. I think it's a little older.
It is older, but it is still available, and it's from what I can tell, it's more of a miniatures game, but definitely worth checking out. And we also looking at Destiny's. Destiny's is new. That's definitely new hotness that just came out.
I've heard some negative things about it. We need to look into it some more.
Yeah. So those are our honorable mentions about games that we haven't played yet that we want to. But let us know for sure. We always like hearing from you guys about what did you think about the games that we talked about? What are some of the games that you recommend that we play?
How dare they not mention this game? Thank you so much for listening. If you are returning, we really appreciate your support. If you're new here, make sure you subscribe. You can find us on anywhere you can get your podcasts. You can find us on YouTube, get in there, Twitter, Instagram. Please subscribe so you can stay in for our caffeinated conversations, or maybe not caffeinated for me tonight.